Om. Om Sahana
Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sah Veeryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vedvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Karpanya Doshopahata Swabhavaha Prichhami Tvam Dharma Sammo Vichetaha Yashreyasya Nishchitam Brūhi Me Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. Om Vangme Manasi Pratishthita Mano Me Vachi Pratishhthitam Avir Avirma Edhi Vedasya Ma Anisthaha Shrutam Me Ma Prahasihi Anena Adhitena Ahoratran Sandadhami
Ritam
Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanma Bhavatu Tad Vaktaram Avatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Avatu Vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnevi Shunayama Devaha Bhadram Pashyema Akshavirajatraha Stiraira Ange Stushtvavvam Swastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swastina Indro Vridhashravaha Swastina Pusha Vishvavedaha Swastina Staksho Arishtanemi Swastino Brahaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Aham Vrikshasya Rediva Kirti Prishtam Gireriva Urdhva Pavitro Vajiniva Swamritam Asmi Dravinagvam Savarchasam Sumedha Amritokshitaha Iti Trishakur Vedanuvachanam.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayan Narayan, everyone. So we'll start with Shlok 14, right? The last class has not been uploaded yet. It's on Abhinav's computer because we had changed the computers last time. So I'll make sure that I upload both the classes, last class as well as this class after today's session, right? So sorry about that. I know a lot of you have reached out to me asking me to upload it, so I will do it today. Okay. Okay. So does anyone want to summarize last class? Somebody who attended, of course, not otherwise because I've not uploaded it. Let me actually take it. Okay. So we're doing Kshetra Kshetragya Vibhag Yog. And in the last class, we basically discussed the final means of perception, right? So means of perception, as we understand, are actually what is going to get us the perception itself, right? So we just need to focus on incorporating means of perception either in our behavior or in our being, depending on what type of means of perception we're talking of. They are basically ways of being, ways of behavior, right? Or doing certain types of things. Once we follow them, we will achieve perception of God. And another interesting thing here is that, you know, whatever actions we may do, right? That action could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be like, if you look at everything that we are learning in Gita from chapter 1 onwards, right? If you connect them back to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, okay, the eightfold Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you will find it in some place or the other. It fits into that structure as well. And all aspects are important. And no one particular aspect can be taken in itself, right? Whether when we talk about yum, things that we shouldn't do, like things that we should abstain ourselves from, like stealing or jealousy or hoarding or covetousness, right? All of these things we shouldn't do, or things that we must do, the cleanliness of body, the cleanliness of mind, the cleanliness of our hearts. We should focus on all of this. Alongside that, then there are meditative practices, which is also part of controlling our senses. So control your senses, control your body, control your mind, control your intellect, let your intellect control your mind, right? Now, by itself, if you look at them, each of them is an activity by itself. So if you are behaving correctly, you'll be like, I'm a good person, right? I never harm anybody. I never do wrong things to anybody. I'm a good person, right? This person would never achieve the end goal of his life. He'll never see Bhagwanji. At most, what will happen is that they will accrue good karma and they will come back again in this life and again be subject to the same set of things. Now, why is that not good enough? It is not good enough because this world by itself, this world is transient. It is mithya. So if it is mithya, this is a dukhalaya. You can never achieve happiness. Why can you not achieve happiness just by coming back into this world? You cannot achieve happiness because there is only one that is always going to be full of happiness. There is only one source of eternal happiness, eternal bliss, and that is Bhagwanji himself. Sat Chit Anand. Everything else is going to give you pleasure or a sense of happiness, which is a minuscule amount of the real happiness that is possible for us to achieve. And it will only be there with us for transient time. It will come and it will go. Whenever you experience day, know for sure that night will follow. Every night is followed by a day. Every moment of pleasure will be followed by a moment of suffering. Every time we indulge our senses for any pleasure, know that there is suffering waiting for us in store. Whether we acknowledge it today or not, 100%, it is the two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. That is why being good only is never going to be enough. Having said that, you may do all the puja in the world, you may do all the yoga in the world, you may be the best hatha yoga person, you may be the best, whatever, all of those other components you may do. But if it is not translating into your behaviorally, you're not changing yourself. If you're not controlling your anger, if you are still blaming the world for your ills, if you are not taking control of your behavior, and if that is not changing, if you're not changing a moral behavior, if I can say that, right? If you are coveting other people's things, you're being greedy, or you're being jealous of other people's achievements, or saying mujhe bhi ye chahiye wo chahiye, right? If that is not changing, then without that behavior also you cannot achieve his perception. without changing our moral behavior and making it perfect in line with what Gita principles tell us. That is like building a very large structure. Suppose you're doing all the puja, all the sadhana, you're doing all the yoga without it impacting your daily behavior, then it's similar to creating a very large structure on extremely weak foundation. Extremely weak foundation because you've not controlled your senses. You've not controlled your mind. It's your senses and your mind. If you control these two, it will translate into proper good behavior in the world around us. Without this, everything else we do is being constructed on a very, very weak structure, very, very weak foundation. So it will never stand. At some point of time, the whole thing is going to fall off. That is why in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Yam and Niyam are the first two things that we must focus on. And that is why Gita starts with the first 6 chapters, which is around Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is all about external behavior and internal ways of being. With that understanding, we are going to then eventually incorporate these means of perception in our way of being. When we incorporate them, we achieve him directly. Right? So to achieve him, we have to have all of these things in place. है ना? And इनमें से किसी भी एक चीज को we hold on to it, others will follow. So you don't have to look at all of them. I mean, of course, know all of them. But when you're trying to practice, take 1 or 2 only and give your full heart to practicing them. Because that one thing, if you really fully practice it, you cannot practice it without other things coming into play by themselves. Right? Like Gandhi ji took non-violence as a concept.
No, truth.
Truth, sorry. Pursuit of truth. But non-violence and everything else followed in its wake. So his entire life's pursuit was pursuit of truth. Right?
So just to add, right, like this entire chapter, he's given us an analogy of Kshetra, Kshetragya, field and farmer. So and the reason why he's describing the characteristics of the field and characteristics of the farmer is for us to be aware when we are being the farmer and when we are being the field. For most of us, we are operating from field because of our deep relatability to body consciousness. So how do we move from field to becoming farmer? He's given us those means of perceptions. Catch anyone and you will start becoming the farmer. Now, how do we know we are being the farmer? He's now going and elaborating on the characteristics of the farmer.
Yes.
For us to experience that element of a farmer within us. So the next shloka will continue elaborating on that to deepen our understanding of what to even look for within and become aware of.
One more thing that we want to I want to remind everyone before we move forward is when we say that we need to understand means of perception, right? When we want to understand means of perception, understanding is not at an intellectual level. So if we talk about humility and you say, I understand humility, that has no meaning. You cannot understand, you cannot study humility. The only way to understand humility, really understand, when you can, only time you can say, I have understood humility, is when you have become humble. Till the time you have not become humble, you cannot and must not say, I understand humility. The only way to understand divine knowledge is to become it. Okay?
So I think someone just asked a question here in our house about what is field and what is farmer. So
Kshetra, Kshetragya. So we'll just
quickly
summarize that quickly.
Okay, so field is basically the gross. Everything sansaric is the field. And farmer is the soul, the capital S self. So just like in the analogy, a farmer will take a seed, he will bow it in the field, he will get the crops and results that are due based on the nature of the field. So if he bows a seed or sows a seed in a wrong field or a peach seed, then you'll get a peach tree, right? So we are operating in sansar, which is the field, which operates with its own laws of nature and science. We cannot operate beyond that law of nature and science. But as the farmer, as the soul of the body, we have the power of not identifying with the field, but identifying with the farmer. Because we are really not the field. The body will disintegrate at some point and our soul will continue the journey. The essence of who we are will continue in a different form. And that we know to be true. Yeah.
Yes. One more thing, right? Kshetra, when we say kshetra, kshetra is not just body, right? If we remember our hierarchy, right, the 23 constituents of nature, every single constituent out of those 23 is part of what? Kshetra, correct. Kshetra, right? Which means it is the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements that go with the gross elements, the 5 gross elements of fire. No, let's start with the grossest first, right? Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Okay. All of these are gross elements, and then they have subtle elements associated with it. All 5 of them. Then the 5 objects, 5 subjects of perception, and 5 objects of action. So 20, and then our antakaran, which is mind, ego, and intellect. Every one of this, which means our antakaran also is part of gross. So even after our death, why the body falls off, the antakaran is still there. And that antakaran is also kshetra, not kshetragya. The only kshetragya is the pure consciousness. That is separate from the rest here, kshetra. Kshetra is everything below, and kshetragya is that pure consciousness, the Sat Chit Anand, which powers the entire kshetra for every activity. And right now, our soul, when it comes down, we talked about the 4 levels of consciousness in last class, right? Today, we are at the lowest level of consciousness, which is that body consciousness, where the soul fully identifies with the mind, with the ego. So it fully identifies with the antakaran. And because of the full identification with antakaran, that I am this antakaran, it identifies fully with this body. And we are all in that space. We cannot say I have gone above this body consciousness, because if we did, then nobody should be able to irritate you. If we are above the body consciousness, that at no stage should the other person be able to vex you. Every time something goes wrong, you should be able to look internally and say, okay, what is this mirror telling me about myself? What do I need to change in myself? Every VVGP that happens around us is only a mirror of my antahkaran. Yat pinde tat brahmande. Jo mere andar hai, whatever is inside of me is reflected outside of me, everywhere. Right? So we are at that body consciousness. As we keep rising, there is going to be a differentiation between the two, and then we start to identify that I'm really the soul and not this antakaran, not this body. That is our journey. And for this, in this chapter, now that Jnana Yoga has started, we are now beginning to get deeper understanding of what this kshetra looks like, what are the characteristics of this kshetra, what are the transformations of kshetra, what happens to kshetra, and the characteristics of kshetragya, to really be able to see, okay, this is kshetra, this is kshetragya, for us to identify on a daily basis of who we are being. When I eat something, can I remember who's actually consuming this food? Or am I doing this for the body? Yeah, Vijay.
Just one point I wanted to add on here. All of us would probably may come across a situation where why it is happening again and again. The similar kind of situation that we have been there, which cause some irritation or this thing. So we usually tend to get irritated or tend to get vexed because of that particular event. So once you accept that, then it won't recur at all, or even if it recurs, it won't bother you anymore. So that's a kind of experience that I have personally gone through. Means like there are certain things which you are like even on the say the road rule, basic road rule and so on. So the two-wheeler is cutting across like all over the place. You will not be able to drive your vehicle properly, all that kind of thing. Sometimes irritation comes, and then like some harsh words could also come, right? Like, but okay, that's the way they are. Means like if you accept this is going to be the way it is, then obviously it's not going to bother you anymore. Or even if it happens, you tend to accept and move on. That's the way it is, right? Like that's going to keep your internal peace intact. So that's kind of like how I have experienced it. Just wanted to share it.
Absolutely, Vijay. Thank you for that sharing. It's very powerful. But one thing I want to highlight in this one is, what does acceptance mean, right? Um, so acceptance for a certain situation. So, like you said, when something happens, either we change it or we accept it and make peace with it, right? A lot of times people we tend to interpret acceptance as passively just accepting whatever's happening, right? And that is not the right way to call it acceptance. It is not real acceptance, because when we do that, what happens is the only thing that we are changing is hum log externally we stop to react, externally we stop to say something, like all of that external things change, stop, but internally we continue to accumulate upset, anger, annoyance in some capacity or the other. And at some point of time, either it will create some kind of a knot inside us, okay, or it will transmute itself and come out as irritation in some other issue. And it will get misdirected, redirected to something else. And then you'll be like, that situation wasn't really as much as what, like, it did not warrant the kind of reaction I gave, right? So, what does acceptance mean in that case? Acceptance means that when something external happens that you're not happy with, or what causes you to get vexed, you need to evaluate internally what it means to you. You need to evaluate and understand the knot inside of me. Why am I getting vexed? Why am I getting irritated? What is the story inside me? Right? Resolve that internally and ask yourself what needs to change internally. That is acceptance, because once you have resolved that knot inside, and then that situation will stop vexing you altogether. It will not transmute itself into something else. That is the real acceptance. Cleanse yourself from inside on that. After that, you won't even notice that situation. So either it will stop occurring in your life, or it will occur, but it will have zero impact on you. जैसे कि प्रेशर आया और आपके अंदर से निकल के चला गया. It will have no impact on you. But that acceptance is only it's only real, and it will not have real impact on you only and only if you resolve that internal knot inside of you that caused you to behave in a certain way. Why that situation had a power over you at all? Because there is some knot inside of us that needs to be resolved. Uske baad only that situation will stop having a sway on you. That is the acceptance. That is important to understand. It's not about कि हम react करना बंद कर देंगे, मुंह बंद कर लेंगे. Thanks, Vijay. So we'll start with Shlok 14.
Tuhina, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that the knots you are saying, is that our vasanas, our our vasanas, what we have to work on?
Yes, so almost always there is some kind of vasana that is involved, right? And that vasana will cause you to behave in a certain manner. So when you go back to it, you will start to understand what vasana is there. But vasanas, maybe all kinds, like the positive ones, the things that impel you to do something, or something that, wants you to stay away from something. Rag, dvesh, dono type ki vasanas hai, right? So in certain cases, like the example that Vijay gave, in certain cases, it is a vasana that is linked to
So-
dislike, dvesh.
I'll give you an example, right? So I'll extend the traffic example. I can visualize that if I'm driving in Bombay and I have to drive 50 minutes for a meeting, and I started maybe on time or I started 5 minutes late, but traffic is more. So now there is anxiety inside of me. Now there is a two-wheeler or a truck that has aggressively cut me, that has forced me to brake. And now I know for a fact what's going to happen is I will get irritated. I will say something which is so silly. I will say something in the closed AC of my car that only I can hear, right? But I will say something, right? So what has happened is Bhagwanji has created the perfect situation to show how easily I can be vexed in a situation I cannot control. If in that moment I just flow with the situation and be angry and be upset and whatever, chances are I will still reach late for the meeting. Now I'm reaching late for an important meeting, and my energy is not good. So what's going to happen? The meeting will not go as well. All of this because I had an attachment to the outcome of that meeting. And I will then find a lot of reasons to blame. Oh, I got late because my mother did not give me breakfast on time, or I got late because a car mein ye ho gaya, driver did not come out. All of those things, right? So, but the true reflection is my vasana. That I was actually attached. I'm that attached to my work and outcome that 5 minutes or 10 minutes late is all it requires. Then
I'm
God will just keep
attached.
testing you.
Yeah, or in this case, I may be attached. Like, you have to figure out what you are attached to in that situation. Could be an attachment to your image of who you are. And if we kept an equanimity in that situation, then we would be doing a positive action instead. Do I need to inform the other person that I'm running late well in advance? Or next time, can I learn from this and say, okay, I always will have some or the other thing. So do I start a little bit early and hence manage my time? Right? All of those other positive actions can happen if we are in a state of equanimity.
So in Singapore, driving is better, but even in India, one of the games I started playing to check my own vasana, whenever someone gave an indicator, I slow down. And I tell Bhagwanji, allow him to move forward. But when I need to have an emergency, give me space. And like I say, works doesn't work, but lok sangram, help somebody else. Aage jaake, hopefully they help us. Right?
The only thing is like as you're pointing out, like after that, like once you react to that situation, say the vehicle situation itself, after that your driving probably is going to become slightly bad, or you will try to drive
Oh,
differently,
yeah.
all that kind of thing. So the once you start accepting it, the case is going to change, right? Like you canvas your meetings goes well, all that rest of the things flow much better. So that's the
Once there's negative energy inside of you, unless you actually tackle it, everything, your whole day will get worse. There's no question about it.
That negative energy will attract more negative energy and it will find ways to survive itself. But if we are able to transmute it, and then the similar thing for positive energy, like attracts like. Always. Yeah. Let's start with Shloka 14. Bhagyashree, you want to read with us?
Yes. In the preceding shloka, the functioning of the self was explained in terms of the senses of perception and those of action. Similarly, his functioning in general is now explained by the Lord.
Sarvendriya guna bhasam.
Sarvendriya guna bhasam.
Sarvendriya vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya vivarjitam.
Asaktam sarvabhrachaiva.
Asaktam sarvabhrachaiva.
Nirgunam gunabhoktra cha.
Nirgunam gunabhoktru cha. shining through the functioning of all the senses, yet devoid of senses, free of any involvement, yet maintaining all, devoid of qualities, yet enjoying all qualities. Functioning without senses, maintaining and enjoying all. Just as all the incoming stimuli are experienced by a person through sense organs, the self too is experiencer of all stimuli. But he does so without the sense organs. It is generally thought that it is only through the sense organs that the stimuli can be experienced. But it is not so in the case of the self, who has no sense organs, but who has the power to experience all. Even in the physical world, the range of the sense organs of man for experiencing stimuli is extremely limited. Several creatures have ranges of perception much wider than those of human beings. In the case of human beings and other creatures, external stimuli like light, heat, sound can be experienced by the corresponding organs only by transmission through some medium. But the self has infinite powers to experience all types of thoughts, emotions, and communications directly without the help of transmission through any medium. In the second line of Shloka, the Lord says that the self maintains all the physical forms of beings, and though he is beyond the gunas of nature, he experiences the effects of the gunas as he is the sentient. He does so not because he is involved in any way with them, but because it is his innate nature to do so. The different functions of beings are performed by the actions and interactions of the gunas, and the beings engaged in those functions for experiencing their outcome. But the self experiences them not as a participant, but as a witness and as a seer only, without any involvement. In fact, the power of beings to experience actions and interactions is just a fraction compared to the infinite power of the Lord to do so.
So compare this to the chapter, to the Shloka 13. In Shloka 13, he said that he has hands and feet everywhere, eyes, heads, and mouths everywhere, ears everywhere, right? He exists in the whole world, pervading everything. And now we are saying he is able to function without senses, right? In above, we said that he has senses everywhere. Now we are saying he has no senses anywhere, and yet he's able to enjoy. The reason is that it is very difficult for our language to express who he really is, our language or any other form of expression. Very difficult to capture who Bhagwanji really is or what he really is. Okay. Similarly, in Shloka 12, we were trying to capture the sense of who he is by saying he is a being, and at the same time, he's saying he's a non-being, right? So you're saying he is this, he is not this. To be able to, and those, it's very difficult for us to really understand all of these unless we are able to go beyond our senses. Okay, every language, art, sculpting, or any other form of expression where a seer has seen who he is, when he tries to express it to us in this material world, he falls short grossly. That is why, as an example, you would sometimes see, pictures depicting Bhagwanji with multiple faces in all directions. That is one way the artist is trying to express that he has eyes everywhere, he has ears everywhere, he sees everything. His omniscience, his omnipresence is being described through that sculptor. It doesn't really mean that you actually visualize Bhagwanji with those type of heads or eyes or whatever, right? So it's so take that understanding when you try and read how Bhagwanji is being described in this, right? But what is definitely clear to all of us in our limited understanding is that he does not need anything, and yet he pervades everything. He's the subtlest of the subtle, subtlest of the subtle. He's subtler than air, he's subtler than atoms, he's subtler than the smallest particle or smallest energy field that you can imagine. And so his ability to pervade everything is there. And it is all connected. Like, try to think of Avatar, right? How in Avatar they try to show that that Evya is everywhere and it is connected to everyone, and you have this portals of connection. The trees that they show are portals of connection. That doesn't mean that Evya only exists in that tree, right? But those are portals of connection. Just like portals of connection to radio waves would be that instrument radio. But that doesn't mean that radio wave only exists where that radio sits. You put that portal anywhere and that will tune into the radio waves. Correct? So Bhagwanji exists everywhere. He hears everything. He sees everything. He understands everything. He understands our manasthiti. He understands our thoughts more than even we understand.
Yeah, so let me just add to this a little bit. What about the subtle aspect that Tuvina is mentioning? It is very hard for us to understand the subtle aspect, verbalize the subtle aspect. We may get glimpses of the experience of the subtle aspect, right? So I'll give you an example, a car. How does a car ignite? How does a car start? People say, oh, maybe it's because the fuel, without a fuel, a car won't run. But we know every time we switch on a car, there's an ignition and there's a spark, and the spark is what gets the car going. Now, if we think slightly deeper, it's not just the spark. What happens? Two molecules rub against each other and create heat. So heat is what ignites a spark, which then ignites the engine, which then uses the fuel, which is then burned into gas, which is then powered with powering the wheels, right? On a daily basis, when I'm driving or when you're driving, do you think about any of this? No. We're so engaged in the gross. We don't sit to appreciate the heat that potentially started this entire experience for us. And that's the same thing multiplied by 1,000 on the gross aspect of us being in sansar, and multiply the 1,000 times of what the subtle aspect of heat is. Right? This phenomenon is there in every aspect of our interaction with this world. There is a subtle aspect which is powering a gross. And the subtler and the subtler and the subtler you grow, the closer you go to Bhagwanji. Just like the subtlest part of us is the soul, which powers the gross. But we are all we interact with is the gross, right? I'll give you a second example. And this is not an example, it's a true story, actually. There is this lady in our Gita Parivar. I'd like to say her name is Ashwini Ji, but I could be Ashwini Ji. And about in 2018, there was a chance for them to do a trip to Gorakhpur, right? Which was organized by Aparna Didi and hosted by Maya Ji in Gorakhpur in India. Now, Ashwini Ji, yahan Singapore mein, she had a little Bal Gopal who she gave a bath to with warm water every single day, right? And that was her routine. Now, when they went to Gorakhpur, of course, the facilities in the ashram, they didn't choose, they didn't expect, none of that was there. But the room they were staying in, that Ashwini Ji was staying in, she was staying in with 4 or 5 other Sakhis. They didn't have any hot water. And Ashwini Ji was, and this was winter, I think it was December or something. And Ashwini Ji was very habitual of hot water. She was very scared of taking a bath with cold water. Okay? She was the second person to take a bath or third person to take a bath that morning. Out of the 4, the first person to take a bath took a bath with cold water. Second person took a bath with cold water. When Ashwini Ji took a bath, there was surprisingly nice, lukewarm, warm water. And the fourth person who took a bath, it was cold water. There's no explanation for it except for her belief that the subtle somehow overpowered everything to create an experience for me. My Lord created it for me because I've been creating it for him. Right. And so these miracles you will see happening in your life. And I can tell you at least 50 that have happened to Tuina and me in the last 1 year. But you need to see beyond the logic. You need to first believe, and you will see that subtle where you're like, I never deserved this. Where did I get this from? How did I meet this person who's added so much value to my life and changed my life direction? How did a stranger recommend a book to me, which was exactly what I needed to read? There are so many such miracles that happen. We just take it as granted because we are focused on the gross, but you don't see the subtle, the energy, the Bhagwanji that is pointing you in the direction that we need to go.
And that is why the subtle is so important. Subtle is so important because ultimately subtle will create the impact in the gross world. So paristhiti may be whatever, your VVGP may be whatever. The impact that VVGP will create on your life is not determined by that VVGP. It is determined by your manasthiti. It is determined by by what your antakaran is in that moment. How you experience that VVGP inside of you will create the impact of that VVGP inside of you. Which means that me and Abhinav can both experience the same VVGP. We may be subject to the same VVGP, but the impact it will create on my life and the impact it will create on his life will be different based on our antahkaran. So it doesn't matter what our VVGP is. That is why we keep saying what? No VVGP is good or bad. There is no VVGP that you should be falling for likes or dislikes. There is no VVGP that is auspicious or inauspicious, good or bad, favorable or unfavorable. Everything depends on your antakaran. If your antakaran is clean, if your antakaran is positive, everything external of you will create an impact that is positive for you ultimately. And this is how strong the subtle is compared to the gross. VVGP is gross and antakaran is subtle. Which is why now in the last shatak, we are focusing on Nirgun Nirakar. You will have to have a lot of patience in this shatak because see in the second shatak, the Bhakti shatak, we focused on the Sagun Sakar aspects and in certain cases Sagun Nirakar aspects of the Lord and how to identify him around us in the Sagun Sakar and Sagun Nirakar ways. In the last shatak in the Gyan Yog, we will be discussing the entire focus is Nirgun Nirakar concept of him. There are going to be concepts of Sagun Nirakar also, but definitely fully Nirakar. Like in this chapter, the concept of Kshetragya is fully Nirgun Nirakar.
Kshetragya is farmer.
Yeah, Kshetragya. Kshetra ko janne wala, one who knows the Kshetra, is the farmer. So Kshetragya is fully Nirgun Nirakar concept. And that is what is being explained to us. So intellectually, it may be difficult for us to grasp, but try and understand as much as you can. And it's okay if you don't understand certain aspects of it. We move on. When we do the Gita the second time and the third time, this understanding will deepen because it is understood. And there is a big assumption here that with every reading of Gita, our practice, our sadhana, our behaviors are going to constantly evolve and change. And as our antakaran keeps getting cleanser and cleanser, our understanding or grasp of this Nirgun Nirakar will keep getting better. Okay. We'll move on to the next shloka. Nena, you want to read this?
Thus showing the existence of functions of all the sense organs in the self, the Lord now speaks about all pervasiveness of the self.
बहिरन्तश्च भूतानाम्
बहिरन्तश्च भूतानाम्
अचरं चरमेव च
अचरं चरमेव च
सूक्ष्मत्वात् देविज्ञम्. Sorry,
सूक्ष्म
there is the. I'll say this again, huh? सूक्ष्मत्वात् सूक्ष्मत्वात् विज्ञम्
सूक्ष्मत्वात् दविज्ञम्
विज्ञेयम्
दविज्ञेयम्
दूरस्थं चान्तिके च तत्
दूरस्थं चान्तिके च तत् without and within all beings, the unmoving and the moving, incomprehensible because of its subtlety, far away and yet near, is that the self within, without, far and near. The self pervades all beings in the same manner in which the water of the ocean pervades the waves, being within as well as without them. The waves are, in fact, water in another shape. The self, however, is incomprehensible due to its extreme subtlety. For example, the entire importance of the rose is due to its fragrance. That fragrance pervades every petal of the flower, but it cannot be described to anyone, though it can be experienced by everyone. Similarly, the self in its subtlety pervades all beings, but cannot be described or cognized. Still, he can be experienced by the contemplation of the mind by everyone. Though the self is the only entity worth knowing, yet he eludes the cognition of the ignorant, who are totally engrossed in the names and forms of the phenomenal world. Nevertheless, for the seers and the devotees, he is so near as to be their own inner self.
So I think the car example kind of fits here and highlights it quite clearly, right? And they've also
This rose
explained
example is very
the
good.
rose example is also very accurate, right? Like the essence of the rose is its fragrance and its smell, which is what we capture in poetry, which is what we capture for love, which is what we capture for giving, all of those things. But where does the fragrance sit? It doesn't, we don't know. It doesn't sit in one particular petal or part of the petal, right? But it's the subtle essence of fragrance that we talk about and we can experience, but we can never even verbalize what it smells like to the next person. I cannot describe a rose smell beyond it being sweet and flowery to Fortuna. And even if I do, there's no way for her to get it. Her ability to understand what the essence of a rose is by experiencing it herself. So your and my ability to experience Bhagwanji is only through one, contemplation of it through our minds. Contemplating through our minds. In other words, reflection, not analysis. We have overtrained in analysis, and it makes it harder for us to contemplate, harder for us to wonder. Right? So it's the pure reflection, the non-judgmental area of experiencing life is where we will start experiencing God. And all of us want to experience God. I'm saying you can experience it 100 times every single day. The only reason you cannot is because you're not in contemplation with the wonder that is around you.
If you remember in the second Shatak, when we were learning about the Sagun Sakar form of Bhagwanji, and Bhagwanji decided to tell about himself. You remember that Vibhuti Yoga, right? He said, I will only tell you about some of the most amazing Vibhutis. I will not tell you about all Vibhutis because it is impossible. They are infinite. So I can't tell you about everything. I will only tell you about the most amazing Vibhutis. Why did he do that? Because It is difficult for us, our dulled senses, to be cognizant of something very small and insignificant and find beauty in that. We will find great beauty, we'll find awe when we see a great bloom of rose. But a small little yellow flower growing on the side amongst the weeds, we will not have reverence for that. He understands where we are. So he said, I will only give you the most amazing, I will talk about Himalayas. I will talk about Niagara Falls because that will inspire your awe. But a small jharna, a small mountain, a small molehill will not inspire that awe. He understands where we are, right? Now, coming back to now, because now we are going to the 13th chapter, right? We are no longer on 10th or 11th chapter anymore, right? So our subtlety has improved. So now he's talking to us about subtler aspects. One of the reasons when we contemplate on the soul, a lot of us miss seeing him is because we expect to see, or we only recognize something miraculously large, something really big that happens. Only then we see, Are Bhagwan ji yahan par hai, right? We see some chamatkar and somebody getting well when doctors said, oh, he would not get well. Or, something big like that, which our senses can capture and understand. Tabhi we say, I saw Bhagwan ji, I experienced Bhagwan ji here. Whereas on a constant basis, a very subtle way in which we can experience him is through the peace. A sense of peace is the very first form when we start to do proper yoga with him in every situation. When we start to do manan and nidhi dhyasan in real form, with full conviction, with full faith, and with full surrender, there will be peace inside of us. And that's his first expression on a constant moment by moment basis. And we have to learn to hold on to it and recognize he is that peace, nothing else. He is Satchit Anand that is sitting in me in those moments. So our ability to see him in VVGP and inside of ourselves has to go subtler. Right? And this is
So the other thing I want to add here now is when we engage with the gross, we will always be forced and encouraged to react to situations. So whenever you find yourself reacting, that means you're operating at the gross level. There is almost no situation that I can think of where you actually have to react. In most situations, you just need to respond.
in every situation.
And for response, there is a necessity of silence that has to exist in your mind, an equanimous state that has to sit in your mind for you to be able to analyze, perceive the situation correctly before you respond. Because when you respond, you can respond to the subtle. When you react, you're reacting to the gross. And the car example that Vijay said, when you're reacting to the gross, what happens? The gross will come and react back to you. You will honk once, he'll honk 3 more times. You will say something, he will say 3 other things. There'll be 2 other cars that will cut you. You completely lost the game. Right?
Soul can only be experienced in the silence. So that is why everything is designed, and everything that we are reading, everything that we will do, Madhnan and Nididhyasana, all will eventually lead us to silence. Silence of the senses, which is why we are taught to control our senses so that they stop running after external material objects. कानों को सिर्फ अच्छी बातें ही सुननी है, कानों को सिर्फ वही चीजें सुननी है that people are talking nice about me. I only want to listen to, that sort of stuff. My tongue only wants to eat tasty food. My eyes only want to see beautiful stuff. My nose only wants to smell beautiful smells, right? The energy has to go inside so that the senses stop talking. I have to quieten my mind. I have to quieten my thoughts. I have to stop running after these things, which is why we are taught to go inwards rather than outwards. Right now, all our energies are constantly going outside and they're getting dispersed. When we start to bring our energies inwards and we start to experience silence of the mind, silence of the body, which is why a lot of the Hatha yoga is important, right? To be able to sit still and not have body, not have energy going into the body, muscles and stuff. You control and you go inwards. Silence of the body, silence of the senses, then the silence of the mind. In that silence, we can experience the soul. Everything we are doing is to go towards silence.
And now I know why there are so many more women in the Gita class than men. All the husbands send their wives to become more silent.
So you can experience God.
Sorry, that joke was in my mind for 5 minutes. I had to crack it.
One thing, that's a very good one, but I cannot laugh. My wife is also here. So one thing I just wanted to call out, I think Kavita also has been talking about that. One is like in fasting, as in not only not having the food, right? Like fasting of emotions also. So if we make it as a regular practice, like Ekadasi or whatever it is, a Monday, Somvar, or anything of that sort, if we can pick on, it has been super helpful. Mind attunes to it, and senses are aligned extremely well on that day. So that I personally experienced it. Just wanted to share.
Very nice.
Somebody else had also raised a hand, no? Was it you only, Vijay, or somebody else?
Not sure, I didn't.
So, Rituj, do you want to read the next?
Yes, one thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All clear.
All right. In any discussion about the self, he is referred to as being situated in the body. These words give an impression that he is held in the body just as water is held in a vessel. If several vessels full of water are taken, the water in each will appear to have assumed the shape of the vessel in which it is held. But the self has a different character altogether. Explaining this, the Lord says,
Actually, this example gave me another thought that I'll share here. To understand how Bhagwanji exists in silence. Suppose we have 20 vessels. All of them are filled with water, right? You have moon reflecting in all of those vessels. So Bhagwanji is that moon that is outside there. The soul is that individualized self, which is the reflection of the real moon in the vessel, which is being reflected in that water. Okay. Every vessel where there are ripples on that water surface, ripples that are created because of thoughts or because of senses, we won't be able to see the image of the moon clearly. But the vessel that is completely quiet and is completely still, you'll be able to perceive the image of the moon very, very clearly. That is why stillness is important to perceive Bhagwanji. And in that last shloka, he said that he's very close and yet he's very far. You can easily know him and yet it will be very difficult to know him. So to understand that is anyone who is able to still the waters, he's able to see him very clearly, very easily. There's nothing else to do. You can just see him. He's available to be seen as soon as you quieten it down. But anyone who is constantly shaking that vessel all the time, because of that constant shaking, he'll keep shaking it and say, it's impossible for me to see this. It's impossible for me. Of course, it is going to be impossible. Anyone who is shaking that vessel all the time, for him, it is impossible to see it. Right? That is the way to understand it, that it is very near and yet very far. Easy to perceive and yet very difficult to perceive for some. All depends on our antakara. Okay. We'll read, Rituj. Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu
Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu
vibhaktam eva cha sthitam
vibhaktam iva cha stitam
bhutabhartra cha tajneyam
bhuta bhartra cha gyeyam
tajneyam
tajniyam
grasishnu prabhavishnu cha.
grafishnu prabhavishnu cha. Though undivided, he exists as if he is divided in all beings. He is the sustainer of all beings and is also the dissolver and originator of all. The all-pervasive self sustains, dissolves, and originates all. A closed vessel is full of space. If the vessel is taken away somewhere else, it would appear that the space inside it has also been removed. Then what remains? Then what remains where it was placed previously? Obviously, the space remains behind as it was. The space is undivided, though it appears to be divided by the vessel. Similarly, the self is indivisible, but in relation to the physical forms, it appears to be divided in them.
This is understood? This example is clear? Yeah. Okay.
Another example would be that of a house. In a house, you divide up the space, which is actually undivided, but it appears as if it is divided because of the walls that we construct. And then we assign specific purposes to each of those rooms. We say this room is a kitchen, this is a bedroom, this is a bathroom, this is the puja room, this is the living room, this is the dining room, right? We assign these different use cases to them. But that does not really change the nature of space. It does not really create a division. The moment you pull down the walls, it becomes undivided again. Although because of the walls, it seems to us as if the space has been divided into individual rooms. Similarly, when the all-pervasive consciousness is attached to a body, to an antakaran, to the kshetra, it feels as if it has been divided up into these multitudes of jivatmas, but it is actually not true. It is one undivided whole.
Again, at dusk, due to insufficient light, a rope sometimes looks like a snake, but when seen in the light of a torch, the snake is no longer seen and the rope is seen in its true form. The appearance of the snake was based on the form of the rope. Its existence in dim light was also sustained by the rope. The disappearance of the existence of the snake is also based on the realization of the rope. Thus, in a way, the rope is the originator, the sustainer, and the dissolver of the snake impression. Similarly, the aspect of the self which originates creation is called Brahma. The aspect which sustains it is called Vishnu, and the aspect which it gets dissolved is called Rudra. Just as there was no arrival of the snake, nor its real existence, nor its departure anywhere. Similarly, the world is neither originated, nor does it exist, nor is it destroyed.
So Brahma is the Rajogun, Vishnu is the Satogun, and Rudra is the Tamogun, all being driven by the Satogun. This example here of snake and rope. Now you understand that there is no real snake. But what creates the snake? What creates the impression of the snake on top of the rope? The rope is the reality. Ignorance, agyan, helps to create the impression of a snake. Now, till the time you, with your ignorance, look at that rope and think that it is a snake, it seems extremely real, right? It seems extremely real. All your actions, your body will behave as if there is a real snake. The hormones, the flush of energy, the fear, the anxiety, everything will be extremely real to you. And you will take all actions as if that snake is real. And when the gyan comes in through the torch, when the light is switched on, the gyan comes and you immediately realize what was sat, what was asat, what was true, what was not true. Suddenly that snake completely disappears. And your behavior will also completely change as per that. This is how we, with our ignorance, superimpose Maya and interpret Maya. And that's how we attach the soul to the antakaran. It is the glue is ignorance. The glue of ignorance puts them together, and the soul, which is infinite, ever bliss, ever blissful, and is ever constant, assumes the intransient nature. Seemingly, it is not real, just the way seemingly the rope took on the nature of a snake, and we behaved accordingly. Only because of our ignorance, we superimposed the snake on the rope. Similarly, we superimpose the characteristics of transience, of dukh, of suffering onto our soul by superimposing our body consciousness and all the characteristics that comes with the body consciousness of limitations onto a limitless self.
So just to add to this, right? The rope analogy here also works perfectly to our body, right? There is no aspect of our body, physical body, that we've chosen. Nothing. Everything that we now identify with about ourselves, our parents, our family, our culture, our religion, our way we look, our gender, our nose, our eyes, everything has been given by Bhagwan Ji. We had no role to play in terms of the choice. Right? Yet the superimposed structure is what? We are so attached to all of this. That is Maya 101. We remember that we don't have a choice. We know logically that we've not chosen any of this. But the superimposed power is such that I'm attached to all of those things. That's who I am. What more proof do we need that we are living in Maya? And we also know we're going to leave all of this behind. Every single thing about ourselves we're going to leave behind. Yet we're attached to it for the limited number of period that we are here. What more proof do we want?
It's like a monkey. See, monkey gets trapped by, so what you should do is you keep there are several ways to trap monkey, but one of the ways to trap monkey is that you put some food inside a vessel with a very thin head. Okay, so the monkey will put his hands inside, grab the food, and then he's unable to take his hand outside. All he needs to do, and this is us, put our hand inside, we hold on to the sansar. Now we're so attached to the sansar that we can't let it go. And as we keep holding on to that attachment is what causes our vinash. All we have to do is to let go of that attachment and take our hand out, and we are free. We only hold ourselves down to the sansar. We only cause our own vinash every day, every moment. With that attachment to the sansar, through that ignorance.
Should we do takeaways?
We can do one more. 17.
Then we'll overshoot time.
No, we won't.
Trust me, it's 40. We'll do,
Okay, then let's.
because this will take another 10, 12 minutes, and then we'll get late for takeaways and everything will get late. Let's do takeaways, please.
So for me, main thing is like fragrance of rose, whether it is a flower or the um, petals, or it cannot be verbalized. But same way, it's the same way to the self also. It can be experienced by the contemplation of mind. And self is the only entity to be worth knowing. Like it's Agam Brahmasmi. So if we are able to understand that, our perception will definitely change.
So one way to definitely do that is by becoming aware of the purpose of every action that you do. So you cannot, we are all in grahas, right? So we cannot stop doing our action and our duty. But aligning every single act to purpose will get you closer to that contemplation of Bhagwanji, of why you're doing something and how he's responding to that purpose.
Should I go next?
Yes.
The learning was about how the application of the VVGP around me and the situation depends on my Antakaranki Shuddhi. So my practice points for this week are going to be that I want to focus on quietening my mind, my thoughts, and my senses, and trying to look inward rather than outward and not blame the situations around me and look within in that regard. Second is to contemplate rather than and reflect rather than be judgmental about myself in the situations that I face. And third is to respond to the subtle rather than to react to the gross.
How would you do that?
To first of all, to respond or react in that regard, that's what you're asking me.
All the things you have given yourself a lot of tasks for the week.
Tasks to do, true. So the thing in every situation that I face, I think just take a moment and not for me is I have started I think in my mind, but I think I need to do Nam Jap obviously and just contemplating that thing and during my Nam Jap hopefully it will come to me that how I need to respond rather than just not stay quiet, but just respond and not react instantaneously. I think that might be one way. And to quieten my thoughts and that way again, Nam Jap should be the solution. But is there any other thing that I'm open to ideas.
How many Namjap malas have you committed?
I've done 12.
12. So first of all, increase it to 16.
Okay.
The number of malas is approximately equal to the number of breaths you take in a day.
Okay.
16 malas you must do so that every breath is imprinted with his name. That's the very first step. Second step is for you to take out 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up. First thing you do is start with a satoba. Okay, maybe don't take any drastic action. Just start with being in your bed. You wake up, first thing you do is say thank you to Bhagwanji. Remember him the first thing and dedicate the day to him, full day, and ask for his guidance. Right? Then if you have a little bit more time, then during the day at some point of time, remember him. So there is one practice that Didi had shared with us, which I think is very, very effective if you can do that, right? This was a practice that Radhe Baba had given to a lot of people. He used to say that every 3 hours in a day, every 3 hours, repeat this prayer 3 times. And what is the prayer? Hey Nath, मैं आपको अपनी शक्ति से नहीं पा सकता. So acknowledge that I cannot achieve you, I cannot see you, I cannot reach you with my own Shakti. Right? But आप अपनी अनंत अपरिसीम और अहेतु की कृपा से मुझे संभाल लीजिए, मैं आपकी शरण में हूँ. Repeat this prayer 3 times every 3 hours during the day. This prayer will keep you strongly connected to him, and over a period of time alongside Nam Jap will help you become more aware of your reactions, and will start to create a space between your reactions to be able to respond, because then he will take over. In every 3 hours you are dedicating yourself to him. Do that if you can. Start with once a day. Slowly you will remember, right? Day one pe nahi hoga every 3 hours. But if you start with that only once a day in the morning, you start with it, it will eventually percolate down through your day. Because end of the day, you have to stay connected to him throughout the day. So these are some of the practical crutches for you. And whenever you can, you should ideally like just read one shloka on your book, on your, like, don't carry your book around, but carry your little, there is that app, Gita app, keep it on your phone. Whenever you are traveling, just read that one shloka and do the manan. Jo bhi khul jaye. That manan nididhyasana. This is how we keep ourselves connected to Bhagwan Ji throughout the day without sitting in one place. While we are in sansar doing all our duties, how do I take those 2 minutes, 3 minutes? And it's all about intention. है ना? अपनी साधना भी उनको दे दो. मैं आपको नहीं प्राप्त कर सकता, अपनी साधना भी नहीं कर सकता आपकी हेल्प के बिना. You take this over. I am in your sharan. And you help me figure out. मैं तो टाइमिंग, मुझसे तो टाइम निकलता ही नहीं है भगवान जी. You only figure it out. And he will over a period of time help. Another thing that Didi Ma shared with us in the last weekend that we were with her, she said कि आप कोई भी चीज, when you do your शरणागति with भगवान जी, and कोई भी चीज जो आपको चाहिए, कोई एक चीज आप गिव अप करके देखो as a fast. Sugar, baked foods, कुछ भी चीज, गलत नहीं बोलना, कुछ भी कोई एक चीज उठा लो आप, you give it up. Do the fast for at least 3 days. Bhagwan ji will speak to you. Right? So fast, give up something for 3 days, 7 days, 40 days. He will speak to you. His intensity will speak to you as you do fast. What is very important though is in a fast that you don't go from fast to feasting. We tend to do that. Every fast follows with feasting. Sara fast ka value khatam. You might as well have not done that. उसमें भी एनर्जी लगाई, इसमें भी एनर्जी लगाई, सब नेगेट हो गया. Follow the path of moderation. So if you do fast, start with something small, kind of a fast, moderate fast, and then you increase the strength as your ability to handle that increases, so that you don't, the pendulum for you does not strike back on the other extreme after that. हमेशा moderation पर ही जाना चाहिए आपका. When you finish your fast, you should go back to moderation and not to the other extreme. अगर आपका pendulum other extreme पे जा रहा है, that means आपने fast बहुत strong लिया. मत लो, उतनी capacity नहीं है अभी. है ना? So keep all of these things in mind when we are fasting and when we are doing how to connect to Bhagwan Ji all the time.
Thank you.
May I go next? Okay. So my takeaway here is focus on the subtle and the gross will automatically follow. That is our focus need to be our antarkaran, and also whatever the VVGP is, everything is mirroring us only. So we have to see and why I am behaving in a way, how I am behaving. It is all because of my internal self. So focus that, and I really like the way how the real acceptance means. So what is the inside story, and how I will change so that the impact of the VVGP will change on me. So that is my main takeaway. And also I really like the moon, vessel, and water example. How the stillness is not there. It's always, the vessel is always shaking, means that reflection is not there. We cannot feel. So the thoughts, senses, everything need to be calm. Everything that we have to just bring in that calmness so that we can experience Bhagwanji. So that is my takeaway. Thank you.
Shall I go? Yes, so this class today, it's stringing together whatever the previous lessons, like the means of perception, how it is tied, it is connected to Kshetrajna, how we can perceive Kshetrajna only through, only if we are going through the means of perception and making ourselves capable of perceiving Kshetrajna. So it was quite, it's deep, and words fail to probably get to what maybe what I'm perceiving and what I'm able to convey. So acceptance, of course, yes. In I think for all our, it's for all of us how we are going through each situation and how we are able to probably understand where we are losing our equanimity in, and then maybe the time period where we has reduced. Like we know faster now that okay, this is where I'm getting disturbed and I'm getting upset, and we are able to uh, analyze the situation better and maybe connect it to why is it disturbing us fast. The connection time and react the response, probably we react at that time, but we understand that maybe in a, I mean, maybe faster than before, like what is happening in our situation here. So that is yes, that acceptance part was my takeaway too. And the other part is subtle, yes. The example of the vessel and how it, the space. So probably, if I'm right, I mean, each body is like a vessel, and the consciousness pervades everything. Only we are unable to see it because of our ignorance. So even if the body goes, the consciousness is there. So that's my takeaway. Yeah.
You.
So I'll go. Um, my my takeaway here is like it's now becoming clearer that what is the field and what's the farmer. Like we learned that field is the gross thing and farmer is the Satchit Anand, the subtle, like everything subtle is the farmer, is the god, and that is what we have to become. So we have to always, how we have to respond to the subtle and not react to the gross. But in any situation, I think immediately we first try to react, but then if we take little bit time, then we can, respond to the subtle than reacting to the gross. And one thing that the example of the rose was a good example. Like fragrance, I can only experience the fragrance by experiencing it, and there's no other way to it. Same way I can experience God only by reflection. So yeah, I want to do that.
That's very
And-
good. Again, Bhagyashree, I think I'll make that slight distinction, although I think it's too early to like get to that distinction. You will not realize God through reflection. What reflection does is, reflection is part of our karma yoga. Okay? Karma yoga never gets us to Bhagwan Ji. But karma yoga is the most essential first step to cleanse ourselves and to make ourselves eligible for receiving the knowledge. The reason we don't know Bhagwan Ji is only one: ignorance. There is only one way to remove ignorance, that is acquisition of the right knowledge. So that Gyan, the moment Gyan comes, ignorance goes. The moment Gyan comes, we are one with Lord. But for that Gyan to be received and understood, we have to make ourselves eligible for that Gyan. You see that Gyan is available everywhere and is available to us at all seconds of the day. That is why in second Shatak it was called the greatest open secret. Bhagwanji is the greatest open secret because the portal to reach him is available to us every second of the day at all times. But हमारे अंदर ही वो capacity नहीं है to reach it. Radio waves are there all the time. Can I suddenly tune myself into listening to the song that's playing on 98.3 FM? I can't. I need the right instrument. I need to have the right radio to be able to connect to it to receive that download. Correct? So, all of the reflection, all of the nididhyasana, all of the karma yoga is required so that this body, this antakaran, this kshetra becomes the right repository, the right tool to plug into that gyan, to receive that gyan. You get the subtle difference between this?
Yeah.
So this kshetra, this body, this maya that has been given to us, we often ask, फिर किया ही क्यों ये सब? ये है ही क्यों माया? This entire maya, this entire antakaran, this whole body is meant to be used as a way, as a means to connect to God. All of our VVGPs are meant to be the means to connect to God, means to cleanse this body and create it into that tool that is perfectly eligible. पात्रता हमारी इतनी हो कि हम वो receive कर सकें.
Yeah. And when you said about VVGP that, like, let's say you said that you and Abhinav could be going through the same VVGP, but you will experience different things. Let's say same situation, you could be like happy, but Abhinav could be like happier, or maybe like you could suffer more, or maybe he will suffer less, whatever. So does that mean that it is meant to happen that way, that you are meant to be more happy and he's meant to be less happy because it is meant to be that way? Or like suffering, let's say I am suffering more than some person in a given situation, does that mean that I was meant to be suffer more?
No. This is where the free will comes into play. Right? So what was meant to happen was that VVGP. वो VVGP होना ही था, हो गया. But our free will is how we experience it, how we perceive it. And that is our antakaran. So whether you suffer through it, whether you stay happy through it, that is exactly where our free will comes into play. Okay? And then based on our free will, the choices we make on how we experience this VVGP and then how we react to it will create a residual impact on us. So that is why our manasthiti to a certain paristhiti will determine the impact of that VVGP on my life. The residue it creates, the impact it creates on my life. It could be greater, it could be smaller, it could be positive, it could be negative. Everything depends on my manasthiti, it depends on my antakaran. So whether you suffer or whether you're meant to do only one thing, you're only meant to experience bliss. But through our own free will of choosing to be veiled by the ignorance, we suffer. So this is where our free will needs to come into play, where we start to focus on the positives. We focus on Bhagwanji, we focus on values, we focus on Gita principles. In every situation, we ask ourselves, what is the Gita principle at play? What does Bhagwanji want me to do? What is my duty in this VVGV? What is my duty towards this person? As long as we keep focusing on that, we keep cleansing our antakaran. And our ability to see subtler and subtler aspects of it, to experience those subtler aspects will become stronger and stronger. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll do the closing shlokas. Do you hear me? Sure.
You start.
सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु ॐ सर्वे सन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Hello.
Narayan Narayan.
Narayan. Thank you.
Bye, Narayan.
Narayan Narayan.
टेबल लगाता है नहीं hungry. आपने breakfast भी नहीं
I mean, 68 pages in just like the last 10 minutes.
fast.
Because it's such a
Hi, Dad.
to